Well, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Mike, Norris, and myself have been put assigned as co-chairs of the task force, and this is our third one. We were in Western New York last week. We were in Utica area last night, here tonight, and then we have 3 stops, Rochester, the Capital District, and Long Island. And one of the reasons why we try to spread it throughout New York is we want to, even if it's the same, some of the same stuff we're hearing, there might be some differences because of regional differences. So we tried to go from Long Island out to the Buffalo area. We're getting really good feedback from the 2 meetings that we've had. And how this all started was last year I was appointed chairman of the steering committee. I didn't know what that is, but I was appointed to it. And Mike came up with this suggestion of doing a task force across the state, because in his area, along with my area and Mark's area and Will Barkley's area and all around the state, we're hearing that there are that gap between students who are not going to go to college and want to go out into the job market, and exactly what type of program or so that they can get enrolled in and do that with. We have heard almost, well, we're only there in 2 different, we have heard in both areas that manufacturing groups, trades, that they are lacking manpower to do those jobs. And we're not here to say that we shouldn't put kids in college, but we're saying that not everyone wants to go to college. State education department, we've got to work with a little bit more and try to get some type of certification, whether it be a degree of something, so when these students leave their high school, that they have some type of an occupation or job. We lost $1.3 million in population in the state of New York over the last few years. If we develop programs where our students could walk out the door and start working immediately, I would think we would keep more and more of these students here in our area rather than losing them to other states. The bottom line is, we know that working with the state education department is not going to be a fast fix, and we know we have to work through that. But one of the questions at one of the meetings that we had was, well, what are you going to do when you get done with the 6 task force meetings? We're going to develop a plan. We're going to develop a report that goes not only to our members in the Assembly, but to the Senate, to the Governor's office, and to the state ed. We did the same thing with, if you remember, the Common Core problem. In fact, my Common Core meeting was here in Lowville Academy, and we developed a program. We had solutions on that after our task force was done. Some of those took place. The governor took credit for it, and I don't care if he wants to take credit for it, but we got to get that stuff. We got to get things like that done. And so the task force is not going to be a report that we're going to put up on the shelf and say, see, we did a report. We're going to push and push and push down there and until we get some responses from state ed, from the governor's office, from the Senate, to see exactly what we can be doing to help students, and in fact then help employers, help our community colleges, help BOCES, and try to come up with some type of a certification, not just classes, but some kind of high school certification, so that that the students can walk up and do. Now, so I'll give you the game. What we're going to try to do tonight. I hope we can hear from some people to give us some kind of feedback on how we can achieve that. What do you need? Whatever occupation you're in, whoever you're here representing, what can we do in Albany that we have to push for to accomplish this? That's what we're here. We're here to listen. I've already talked too much, but we're here to listen, not talk. So I hope that some of you will be giving us some feedback on exactly what we can do in this next session. So again, there's the microphones that you see are for our audio, not this one, but so that we don't like sitting here taking a lot of notes. It's going to be recorded so that after we get done with these 6 sessions, that we could go back and pick some of the things out of there that we think that we can accomplish, that we can fight for, and so forth. So before I get going, I probably, Will Barkley is running a little bit late, but Mike Norris is here, and I just want him to introduce himself.
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Ken for having me and having him be with me along this path as a co-chairman of this task force. Mark Walzak, a good friend of mine, and I tell you, you're blessed to have both of these members representing this area of the New York State Assembly. I've worked with them. I am Mike Norris. I'm from the Western New York region, near Buffalo and Niagara Falls. I represent Erie, Niagara, and Orleans counties, parts of all 3 of those counties. The reason why I wanted to embark on this task force, along with Ken and Mark and my fellow colleagues, is a very simple reason. And that's, I come from a household growing up with 3 brothers. I happen to be the attorney, for good or for bad. My next brother is a teacher, and there's an accountant, and the smartest one of all is my brother Jeff, who's an electrician. Because he recognized early on that school necessarily wasn't for him, but he was good with his hands. He went to our local BOCES program. He got a great skill, and he's making very good money out there right now in the workforce. And I believe it's very, very important that we focus on this issue because there is a professional skills gap out there right now. If you try to call and get a plumber or an electrician or someone in the trades, it's difficult to find. When I spoke with employers in my district particularly, there are jobs available right now with the proper skill set. So that's why we're doing this task force, to hear from labor, to hear from the employers, to hear from our education system, to how we can bridge this disconnect so these jobs in the long term can be filled, and we can allow these students who want to go into skills, particularly find these good paying jobs early on. So I'm gonna stop talking because Ken told me I had less than 2 minutes to talk, but we want to hear from you. And it's going to be very interesting for us, particularly Ken and I, who have heard 2 other sessions, the similarities and maybe a couple of differences in this region. But I bet you there will be a lot of similar themes from what we've heard in Buffalo and in Utica. Mark?
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief. Thank you to the 2 chairmen for having me, and Mike, it's good to see you. Welcome to the front yard of America. It's good to have you here, and Ken, thank you for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to hearing from everybody here tonight, so a big thank you to everybody that showed up. I think I'll be taking some copious notes and look forward to the follow-up reports that your task force does. So great work. I look forward to seeing the momentum. I think something that the seasoned assembly members know that I think some experienced.
No,
I didn't say it was bad seasoning. I didn't say it tastes. Well, anyway. Hey, Mark. Something I think even we can forget in our backyard sometimes is how many jobs there are here. And so I'm a freshman assembly member. I've been driving around my district like crazy because I want to know what the difference is for the employers, what we can do from a state policy perspective. And something that I was pleasantly surprised by was how many jobs are available, and this workforce issue comes up over and over again with employers. I figured it would be all taxes and regulations and that sort of thing. And those concerns are there for businesses for sure, but the workforce issues are very real. Somebody said something to me recently, and they said, people don't necessarily move where the jobs are. The jobs are where the people are. And I think when we start to look at this area and the assets that we have here, upstate New York, and all the beauty that we have, people want to live here. They're not always connected to the jobs that are in their backyard, and I think that's where the value of work like the task force is doing can really bring that gap together. So I look forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. What we're going to try to do is try to limit our conversation so that it's direct, and so that if everybody that wants to speak can speak, and we might have questions. And there's Mr. Barclay. We're just getting started.
I can tell.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm late. I'm Assemblyman Will Barclay. I represent Oswego County, a little bit of Jefferson County, and a little bit of Onondaga County. It's great to be here tonight. I appreciate chairs of this task force bringing it here to the North Country and addressing an issue that I think in my time in Assembly has always needed to be addressed. So I think it's great, particularly with some of the new educational standards that have been tried to put in place over the last several years. So thank you all, and again, I apologize for my tardiness getting here.
I'll say 6 to 6:15 was opening remarks, so I think we did it. So what we're going to do is, I think I want one of our graduate students from a program that was just a year ago, I think we cut the ribbon, and maybe start off with him to tell us a little bit about his experience with what happened in this last year. If you don't mind, would you? Okay. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Casey Smith. I attended the NCCER Carpentry apprenticeship program that they had here earlier in the spring. It was a wonderful program. I had a great instructor. It opened up doorways that I never thought I would see in this area. And I mean, I got a job working for a huge contracting company down in central New York. Actually, I think they're based in Liverpool. And now I'm actually an instructor of that same course for Associated Builders and Contractors. The class that we have going on right now is full of students or trainees that I see. I looked up the other day and one person was reading and every other student in the class had their nose in the book and was following along. They seem like they're really into learning about carpentry. The thing that I like about the course, though, is NCCER is a nationally accredited apprenticeship program, and they have all sorts of different programs. They have HVAC programs, and it's all standardized. So whoever teaches that or instructs those programs has to do it exactly, like, not exactly the same, but the information is exactly the same. So a first-year apprenticeship costs usually around $5,000. These guys were able to, with the help of Kathleen, get that for free for a lot of students. And I know that at least 20 of them got jobs right out of the class. So the workforce does need more skilled labor or skilled workers, and I do think that they could make it better though. Like I know the unions use a completely different apprenticeship program. I know that some BOCES courses teach NCCER curriculum and others don't. I don't know why that is, but I think that if they started to all use the same curriculum from BOCES to BOCES, and it would eventually, people would know that that curriculum. I had a student that went to that class with me, and he got a job for the same company I'm working for. He's doing great. I mean, unfortunately right now work slowed down, but it'll pick back up. That happens in the labor trades. I think that a lot of students that end up in trouble early in high school, it's because they aren't scholar students. They're not there to learn, sit there, they don't want to read and write, they want to do stuff with their hands. The best thing that ever happened to me in high school was being able to go through welding 1 and 2 at Jefferson BOCES. I still love to weld. I love carpentry. I love to build any way that you can. So, and it's actually an honor to be able to help build the next class. So, is there any questions you guys have?
I do. I heard in the last meeting from someone, I just wanted your opinion too, is that we should be starting students in middle school or younger to talk about the professions, that we're waiting too long to get them involved with that type of program. Do you agree? Or
I agree to some extent. I think that they need to know their options, it needs to be reinforced that just because you do not go to college doesn't mean that there isn't a great trade out there or a great career out there waiting for you. Actually, school was not my thing. I took my GED, and like I said, now I'm instructing a course. I never thought I'd see it happen, and it was all because of the course I took last year. I feel like on an average, most students know by the time that they enter high school whether they want to go to college or they want to go into the workforce. But I think letting them know their options sooner than that is probably a good thing. Either way, I mean, they're either going to choose whether they want to go to college or they want to be a carpenter or an electrician or a mason or a steel welder. So I agree with that. I think that a lot of them end up going into their first year of high school and their counselors want to put together a plan for their education from there on out, and a lot of them are shocked by that and don't know what they want to do because they don't know what their options are yet.
What was your last name?
Smith.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone? No? Thank you guys very much for letting me talk.
Well, first of all, I'm Laurie Atkinson, and formerly Griffin, and I am the NYSET Political Action Coordinator for this district, and I also am in my 30th year of teaching at Copenhagen. This is amazing because I have been preaching this forever, and to hear Casey speak gives me hope. I have students that I see them in what he said, and it's very upsetting to me. And I know that you talked about, I know that you can't change state ed, but they are right now working on a task force, hopefully, to do something about this. I've been preaching this for the last probably 15 years. I was anti-Common Core, and what I would like to see is what you asked. I want to see state ed, I want them to get some pressure. And I did notice on their website, it said that the informational team that they put together includes government relations. Is that any of you gentlemen? I don't know what their government relations is, and they haven't answered me back. This is state ed. So I'm wondering if they're looking for people. So if, maybe one of you could say, hey, pick me, I'll go be your government relations. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think that this Learning for Work has ramifications that are so far-reaching, and regionally we could do great things. First of all, if we could provide some grant money for school districts who are implementing programs like this. For example, at my school, I pushed really hard and I separated my seniors, because unfortunately, some of my kids, like Casey said, they don't like school. And no matter what I do, I have to drag them kicking and screaming through literature, because that's what the stupid regent says they have to pass. And I'm an English teacher, and nobody in my life has ever asked me what I got on the English regents. I love English, I love teaching literature, and I teach all levels from technical writing to AP literature, and I teach 9, 10, 11, and 12 because it's Copenhagen. So they're stuck with me, and I see these kids, and I love these kids, and they grow and they change, but there are some that I will never reach for the very reason that Casey said. I am not doing something that interests them until senior year. So I want to see some funding, some grant money. I'll apply for it to try to get guest speakers in my room, or to do something like, we have DL classes for all the college bound. Why can't we have a CDL class for my technical writing kids, where I get some funding to help them get through CDL, because there's signs everywhere around Lewis County that they need CDL drivers. Or I brought in a guest speaker, and I want them to have a civil service exam day, where I don't prepare them for the regents, I'll prepare them for their civil service exam, because that's what those kids need. But some of it I'm doing on my own, or I'm going and I'm providing the funding for some of these kids, or more money for BOCES. We're a small school, so we take every kid, so we have a lot of out-of-district students. It costs us $10,000 per kid to send one kid to BOCES. So that means my out-of-district kids don't get to go. And so I have a senior this year who should have went to BOCES in 10th or 11th grade. He was not allowed to go because he's out of district and we won't pay it. That's just a board rule, which I understand. That's a lot of money for a little school district. But this kid is sitting in study halls wasting his time, and he's going to graduate with no discernible skills because he doesn't like any of the track programs that are bound for college, and he's not going to college. He's currently right now looking for jobs, and he's not finding any because he has no skills. Or we could provide money for scholarships. We give scholarships to the college bound. I want a scholarship for my trade school kids. I want money out there that I can send a kid to lineman school, because that's pretty costly. Or I want money where I can send my kid to a trade school in small engine or diesel repair because they're interested in it. But I had a kid last year who took first place in his BOCES program at forestry in the competition for Paul Smith's. They offered him some money, but it wasn't enough because his family is poor, and so he did not go to college. And he was top of his class in forestry, and he turned it down even though he was accepted at Paul Smith's. So why can't we provide some type of scholarship for our workforce kids? Or this summer I went to Washington, D.C., and I attended a session with the American Federation of Teachers because I wanted to meet with the tradespeople. And they're doing things in other states, like Connecticut. They actually do exactly what you two were kind of talking about. They kind of divide the kids out after 10th grade, and they put them in a separate class, like what I'm teaching. I have a senior technical writing class where I teach them, instead of literature, we read nonfiction, we read manuals, we compare. I know more about Hemi and Cumming engines than I can ever thought I was going to know about because I ask my kids to research it for their jobs. Or the difference between a steel chainsaw and a different type of chainsaw. I make them do it for their jobs. I'm like, which one would be more beneficial for you if you owned your own business? And I have them go out and research. Or I give them the dimensions of my house And I go to my electrical kids and I'm like, pretend you're gonna rewire my bathroom. What do I need? What do I need for conduit? What am I gonna do for this? Bid, and then I will pick if you get my bid. And I make them compete against each other. So that's the type of funding that I'd like to see, because I really am not that smart about that stuff, but I kept researching and looking it up to try to use the right lingo so that I can get my kids a viable project instead of, so what was Shakespeare doing back then? I don't want that for them. I want them to have viable reading and writing, because English is still a skill. They shouldn't have to just do Regents work to get to where they need to get to in their lives. And then last but not least, maybe we could set up, we have college fairs, but we don't have job fairs for some of these kids. Like, I'm taking a group of kids in a couple weeks to a college fair. We're going to a college to explore. I want us to take kids out to actual workforce things. Let them see. We do manufacturing day for the sophomores, but that's one day. Why not have it for juniors and seniors so they can see what all the options are? There's a lot of stuff out there. We've set it up with Samaritan that we're taking our kids and they're going to explore all aspects of Samaritan, because Samaritan's crying for people. They have 300 openings right now, and a lot of our kids aren't even looking at that because they're just looking at college. We also need to re-educate their parents. A lot of their parents are like, well, you're not going to get anywhere unless you go to college. I'm sorry, these kids are going places because they already have a trade when they come out. But yet, I'm the bad guy for not encouraging their kid to go to college, because not all of them belong there. I know which ones belong there. So I think I'm done. Any questions? My administration is...
What could they do? Maybe something more than what they want?
My administration is extremely supportive. My principal, Nadine O'Shaughnessy, has been on board. When I went to her and she said, are you serious? You want to teach another class? Because I technically, over the course of 2 days, I teach 12 classes, which is a lot, and it's way over contract, but it's a small school. You do what you do. She was on board, and she right now is currently supporting me. I started a capstone project. So instead of kids taking a final exam their senior year, they present to a panel of people in the community, and they justify why they should be let out upon the world. And they also do a research paper that they feel is something they want to research. So last year I did have a student that researched the electrical field, or why lineman school is important. So they're researching things that matter to them. And then my AP Lit kids, yeah, they research things like why vaccines don't cause autism. You know, they were doing the other end, where they were interested in things like that because they're going in the medical field. So she's been there for me, but she can only do so much because we have limited funding in our building. We're tiny. You know, and just like, there's times when I don't sleep much because I stay up doing this and I don't have time to do it at school because we're tiny.
Did you not notice prejudice or bias against us in school?
Not in my district, and I don't think regionally. I think we have good programs, but I do think that our BOCES could offer more programs. Like right now, we do have to ship some of our kids to Jefferson County because Lewis County doesn't offer it. And that's not because they won't offer it, it's just there's not enough people that are interested in it.
The scholarship program, Mike, I think we've heard of both of those. In Western New York and last night in Utica, talking about that. It's funny that we talked about language. So, I don't know whether you were listening last night.
No.
But I think that you're right. We've got to do something about that. And especially for someone who, the bottom line is, if we could get them jobs, they become taxpayers.
Yes.
I mean, it's backwards. This whole thing doesn't make any sense to us, for us, because you get somebody working, he's going to be a taxpayer, and he's going to make and he's, maybe stay here. So.
And support their public education system instead of looking down upon it. I've actually had kids that I've taught before said, well, school didn't do anything for me. And I'm like, really? But they're right, because they didn't learn what they needed until they got out of school for their position. So I think that if we start this now and we really look at, like you said, learning for work, it's not a dirty word. It's something where it's just, you are skilled in this area, I am skilled in this area, but we're all working and we're human beings, and you could even promote community service through that as well, so that it then becomes a whole big new revolution for the entire community. Because if you have people like Casey, who's now an instructor, he could come maybe speak at my school, and we could do a project where we build something like a bench for outside. Who knows? We could get together and show what can you do as a productive member of society, because we value what you're good at.
My name's Brian Heffron. I'm the principal of the Oswego County PTEC program. We are aligned with advanced manufacturing. And before I go into just a couple of points, my first thing that I wanted to get to was to continue to look at the models that are opening up across the state that are working. In our specific program, we are about a year and a half away from our first cohort graduating with degrees in mechanical, electric, engineering, and technology with no cost of tuition. They have the Regents diploma, and they will have completed internships and job shadowing, and they are a passionate group of kids who are going to do great things. And so I encourage this commission to look at some of the models that are currently out there, PTEC being one of them, and look at some of the success that's happening there, and continue to push for further funding, for further support from the State Department of Ed, and to continue to fund those pieces. One of the things that I have noticed in my time, and I've been working in this program since 2015, so it's really a great breath of fresh air to hear what you all are working for, because it's something that we've been living for quite a while in our case here in Oswego County. But one of the things that our program focuses on is three sets of skills. There's the technical skills, there's the academic skills, and then there's the professional skills. And what we have found that traditionally we have always thought the technical skills and the academic skills are the most important. That's what most school districts are focusing on, getting those kids ready. But what we have found in working with our partners, our industry partners in our county, it really is the professional skills that seem to be the ones that are tripping up a lot of this new generation of employees. So that is something that we have put a lot of focus on, and I feel will result in success. And the model that we choose, that we have found to work for us, is providing authentic workplace experiences for our students. That comes in many different forms. That can come in the form of mentorships from students working with folks that are already seasoned in various industries. That can come from providing workplace challenges that schools are bringing in problem-solving sort of strategies and taking a real-life experience or an authentic experience that a workplace has, and getting students to be able to address and use their skills for that area. That can come in simple visitations. One of the things that we have started to do in Oswego County and working with industry is really to promote and open up the doors to folks that are in K through 12 education. And I stress K through 12. A lot of focus, you mentioned earlier about middle school being a focus, and I cannot say that is a important piece to this. So getting high school principals, getting boards of education, getting school counselors, getting teachers, getting everybody who really has that impact, open up the doors to some of the industry and let them go and actually see in person what is happening in their communities, what industry is like. One of the things when I go out and speak to middle school students to try to promote our program, it's a really tough thing, because we we speak to them about a career in manufacturing, and their minds immediately go to assembly lines. It's roaring, it's all about the New York City, the smog. It goes to me, which is great because it tells you that the history teachers are doing their job. But it's when you start to open up their mind and actually show them what a field for us like advanced manufacturing looks like, and not only that, but what is going on in their home, districts, in their communities, and what that looks like. That's when you start to get the excitement going and the imagination going. So I think that's a big part of it as well. I will say that in my experience, the one thing that we have also watched our students grow and start to shape a little bit more of their focus on careers is being able to get them to associate with other students who are feeling and experiencing similar sort of traits. And what I mean by that is when you get a group of kids who are together, who think alike, that is when they really start to open up and understand sort of the possibilities that are laid out in front of them. So once again, I continue to stress that there are wonderful models that are working in the state that are on the cusp of starting to produce the students that will be, moving forward into a new generation of bringing industry forward. And we really start to look at what that looks like and to continue to allow and bridge gaps between industry and school districts. We really, there seems to be continued sort of silo operations, and I really think that bringing the two together is what has made our program move in a direction that we're very excited about. So I will continue to stress that as well. So thank you. I appreciate your time and willingness to be out here.
Brian, nice to see you, and thanks for what you're doing in Oswego County. I've had the pleasure of visiting your program. First, I caught a little bit about the professional skills, but could you provide some examples of like where you think there's a deficit?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that comes to mind is criticism, taking criticism about a project that they might work on. I have found that students really value feedback, but there also can be oftentimes very standoffish a little bit when it comes to somebody directly giving them some feedback on it. And it takes a little while for them to work in how to handle feedback in a positive way and spin that to sort of push them a little further. I will also say that even simple things such as being on time, shaking hands, being able to communicate as a team, being able to work together, all the things that sort of in K through 12 education we sort of hear are things that pop up when we try to bring group activities together. We sort of see manifested themselves once they enter the industry. And a lot of our partners will talk about how they will get people to an when a job opening is available, they'll get people in, many people to come in for that job. And they may get through an interview. And once they put them out on the floor, that's when they really start to see the deficit start to show. I've always said that it's not our job to get our students the jobs, it's our job to have them keep the job, right? And to advance in the job and be able to move forward and higher up in the job. So those are just some of the examples that come to mind when I think about our students.
Just if you could explain a little bit about your PTEC program and some of just to enlighten maybe everybody, the great relationships you have with some of the companies within Oswego County and how you built those relationships and how they're working. Well, you got the first tranche going through, but how they're working. That would be helpful. I know a little bit, but maybe it would be helpful.
There's one thing that I always said, when you get a program that's going to be designed to be put together that is designed to help kids be able to receive these skills and be able to get into employment areas, the last thing that you need is K through 12 educators being the only ones to determine what that's going to look like. we needed to have people who understood what the curriculum needed to be, what the experiences needed to look like, what the challenges were going to be ahead and moving forward. We needed to have those people in the room on day one to be able to work with our team. We have three sort of facets, and that was K through 12, higher ed, and industry partners. And when you put those people into the room and they are developing a program like that, you come to find out that a lot of those challenges and obstacles that down the road you that may not see can be predicted ahead of time. The other thing I'll give an example is that they are constantly coming to us and saying, these are skills, additional certifications, additional things that we think would be helpful for you. So last year, they came to us and said there's the NCRC, the National Career Readiness Program. This is something that industry uses to evaluate employees. This is something that we think that students should be able to have a part of their experience, and when they step into a job interview, they can show and speak the language of a potential employer. We would have not known about this, we would have not come across this, and we think we probably would have not, given our kids an advantage. So having sort of that insight, that experience, that expertise was valuable. The other thing is, I will say that our industry is our community. They know our community. They are the breathing sort of engine of our community. And so their influence and involvement to be able to get kids excited and passionate and interested in these fields, I think cannot be sort of limited. When we go and do recruitment events to invite people to find out what we are and what industry we're about, we have students with us and we have industry partners with us. Because students really get excited when they know that so-and-so from the large manufacturing facility down the road is sitting right there. They need to be visible. They can't be behind the scenes. That's what's worked for us. Yep.
And this isn't really a question unless you want to elaborate on what I say, but I think we all, I certainly feel like we should get permanent funding for PTEC so you don't worry about these tranches. I know some of the school districts now are concerned about sending people into PTEC because they don't know what the funding is going to be there to support those students going forward. So, interestingly enough, I've talked to some of my city colleagues in the Brooklyn. They have a very good PTEC program, and they're interested. So it's kind of an alignment, which we don't always have in New York State, between upstate guy and downstate. So maybe this year we can get some permanent funding. So there's a predictable source of how this stuff's going to be paid for going forward.
You said you're in the middle schools a lot, trying to do the recruitment at an earlier age. How do you try to integrate parents into the discussion, and what advice can you provide to us to incorporate in the report on how to better expose students to careers, professional skills early on, and mechanisms for our report?
Sure. So I think one of the things that we have done is that we have created sort of STEM events in the community. And we will do these not just in school districts, but we'll do them out in community areas, libraries, other places that, that typically, families might not be, might congregate or be around. But one of the things that we have a duty of doing is to promote the STEM field. And by promoting the STEM field to the family, I think that what that does is oftentimes it gets conversations going on the ride home. It gets conversations happening when they're in front of the TV. Our biggest thing is try to give parents the tools to kind of facilitate some of those conversations. So it really is an education thing. We have worked with our partners to open up their facilities to the community as well, because just as much as the students don't know what's going on inside that building, parents don't know as well. And so it really is trying to give them an understanding, and also talking in real terms about expectations of the jobs. I mean, we have our partners will speak to students and families and let them know what their job outlook looks like. They'll open up the books and tell them how many people are retiring, how many people they're expected to turn over. And then they'll tell them what the starting salary is for a student that has perhaps a 2-year degree, or a student that's graduating with a certificate, from high school or whatnot. And I think that also gets them to sort of recognize that they can stay in their community, they can raise families, they can be a part of they can be a part of an area and contribute to it, and also have a sustaining job, one that grows. We have found that oftentimes the parents will often look to school districts for a lot of those answers about career, which is why we have to continually work with school districts, school staff, to educate them as well, because in all honesty, they are the sort of the front lines. We work with teachers. We will go out and speak to teachers directly about our program and invite them to come to our program, because I would say the majority of the students that come to our program, I would like to say that I standing up in front of them and talking to them is what influences them, but that's not the reality. It's their teachers who pull them inside and say, you look like, I know your skills, you look like a kid that this program, this field, this track would benefit. So it's really, and I will say this, that teachers' roles have sort of, and we all know this, have expanded so much over time. They have so many different hats and roles on, and outside of being therapists and supporters of this and that, they really now take on a career guidance role as well. Kids are looking at their teachers and saying, what is out there? And I think that conversation really makes an impact, because students really do look to their teachers as a source of understanding and as a source of reliability. So once again, giving the people who have the access to students' minds and influence, giving them the tools necessary to have the conversations and be confident about what is out there, I think is key.
How do we, and maybe we already touched on this, but how do we avoid overlap with union apprenticeship programs?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have found that, at least in our partners, we have 5 industry partners. 2 of them are working with the union because of PTEC being such a new program and having individuals who are coming in looking for job shadowing at such a young age. They have sort of begun discussions with their union about what this looks like and if this can sort of fit into to their specific program or their specific field. But we have found that other partners have had a much easier role in terms of opening it up and allowing students to come in and experience job shadowing and internships. But I will say that in my experience of talking to folks in unions, in our sites, in our industry sites, they recognize the same skill gap that everybody else has recognized, and they really are excited. They really are appreciative that there's something like this and avenues that are like what we have, that were not there when they were going through the ranks, so to speak. So I think continuing to have them be a part in educating them about what this process looks like and how getting their input on how we can move students through this process to give them the skills to be ready to be able to work on the job and learn in those experiences are key. But it's, that's something that I think industry has a better understanding of to be able to speak on. And I think having, more folks from the industry to come up and maybe speak on their behalf would be helpful.
So my name's John O'Driscoll. I served a 4-year apprenticeship to be an electrician. Currently, I'm a business manager for IBW Local 910 in Watertown. I think I want to premise my remarks with an analogy. When the state throws money to lure a business into town, and you're the existing business that does the same thing, You know how that existing business might get their dander up a little bit? I'm the existing business. We've had an apprenticeship for 60 years, and it's all funded, well, almost over 90% funded. Every hour my guys work, including myself, $1 an hour on average is set aside to pay for that program. So when I hear things about the grants and the funding and everything else, it kind of, I mean, it's just human nature. If you've done something and paid for it within house for so long, you know. But having said that, as far as the skills gap and the workforce, I know I've got a big bubble of retirements coming in the next 8 years of my journeyman. It's a huge concern. I'm training as many apprentices as I can. And then to add to that, I'm losing people to Brookfield Power, National Grid, Clarkson University, Canton College, New York Power Authority, Alcoa, on and on and on. And they're hiring journeymen away that costs them nothing to train because we've trained them. So I get that, and there's no easy solution. I think from the paperwork you gave me when I came in here, what I think I want to caution you on and compare to is the time of training and the on-the-job training and how critical the on-the-job training is. We recruit heavily out of BOCES, Canton College, all across. My jurisdiction goes all the way to Plattsburgh. I've got a school in Watertown and Plattsburgh. And we recruit out of all those. Last year we got 3 students out of the BOCES in Watertown. It was great. We did a signing day. It was a great thing. But they start out as a first-year apprentice. So stop and think about that. They went to school for 2 years there. One of my members was their instructor. They got excellent instruction, but still, to be a commercial and industrial electrician, they're starting out right at the beginning. That BOCES is great training, and I'm just saying, I want to put into perspective, if you want people to work in industry, especially in my trade where you're working with high voltages and dangerous things, and you're working in construction and in any industry, if you're a maintenance electrician, you know, say working at Kraft or a paper mill, that you need extensive training. So I think I just want to say that my training currently, when I went through, it was 4 years. Now it's 5 years. So my apprentices go through 5 years of night class. It runs like a college schedule. They start in September and go through May, 2 nights a week most of the year. But the most critical portion, besides that, they're doing 8,200 hours minimum on-the-job training. And working side by side with that journeyman that's been doing it for years is priceless. So that's, I mean, in our, you know, and that's what, after reading this, you know, and it said, you know, the employer has to hire half, and I guess that's just the thing you need to keep in mind. The employer has to take it seriously. The guys on the job have to take it seriously and train that person, not just look at it like it's a low-cost employee, or, you know what I mean, that. And I'm trying, like I said earlier about that analogy, I'm trying to be positive with this, but that's kind of my fear, you know. So, but we work closely. But Ken, to answer your question, I'm going to make sure I call you right before Career Jam next year, because we have over 80 employers there. Mark, if you went last year, that's all 8th and 9th graders. There was over 2,000 of them there last year. It's all hands-on. So that's what we do. I'm on the planning committee for that, and we work JCC, BOCES, a bunch of other people work on that to prepare that. The workplace is the one that heads it up. Cheryl does. So that's a great thing. It's to get them started at 8th grade, to get them thinking, hey, you know, what are the other careers? And they're all careers that hire here in Jefferson, Lewis County. So I think that's really important too. There's no point in promoting something that somebody's going to move away. I've got a daughter in South Carolina, so I'm living it, right? So, and Ken, you've been to my training center. You've seen how extensive our training is. We just added about 1,500 square feet of space just to do more hands-on thing, to prepare the apprentices more for working in the field. So,
Isn't there a way that the unions the school districts, the BOCES, really start a career path so that there's a curriculum that these younger kids can be going that would also help you in recruiting?
We do. We have. They are using some of our like our DC voltage circuit teaching curriculum. They're using that in the BOCES now. So, and I'm on several committees with BOCES, advisory committees, and so we partner really well. We work together really well. So, but I can see where you're kind of going, and a lot of, and it's natural for the parents to say, hey, I want my kid to get in your apprenticeship, and they want an assurance or a direct entry kind of thing, and it really doesn't work. And we're limited. I mean, 12 is the most apprentices I can take in my Watertown program, and the problem we face, a really big challenge with construction, is construction work cycles. We're on a high right now. Things are, the last couple of years have been really great. We went through stretches where Fort Drum was really busy. I had 200 guys working on Fort Drum at one time. Now there's probably 20. You know what I mean? So it cycles. I've got a lot of work coming in Lake Placid soon, started and coming. So you know what I mean? And our area is so vast that, you know what I mean? When I had some guys out of work this spring, a lot of the hiring was in Saranac Lake. Well, the guys were in Ogdensburg. So that's a 2-hour drive. Some of them did it, some of them went, some didn't. You know what I mean? So those are the challenges with construction, the work cycles. And a couple of years ago, I have a new training director who's been here about 3 years. And the first year we had 18 apprentices off work in the winter. I mean, I had to take his sharp things away from his desk. He was just in a panic about it, But that's the nature of construction and the challenge of it. And I mean, there's places to go for a journeyman. If a journeyman wants to travel, I've got guys working in Beaver, Pennsylvania, on that big cracker plant, because you can make a lot of money there. It's like a new plant, similar job. But the apprentices have to stay here because they have to be here for school. And it's very difficult for us to send them where there's a ton of work coming in the Utica area. Utica is going to be extremely busy the next few years, So, but I know what you're saying. And we work together. We don't, I work JCC, both, everybody. We all work together. So, to try to do the best thing, but it is a challenge, definitely. So, and I think part of the reason I lose the people I lose to those employers, and it's a misconception, even with the union. When you work construction, you work, you get paid, you don't. There's no sick time, there's no vacation time. So that's part of the reason, that's the draw that we lose some of my guys to. After working construction, driving all over the North Country, then they can drive to one place and they get Veterans Day off, they get Columbus Day off, and that's just the difference between construction. So, but that is what it is, and that's not going to change.
I just want to be clear so I understand. There's a couple things that you're concerned. One, you worry about being oversold, the trades are being oversold to?
No, I don't think so. I think I've seen, I've been around in this quite a while, and I've seen the pendulum swing. I worked in schools for years. I'm an Indian River kid. I worked at Indian River for years. And just the way construction workers are even treated, or looked down upon, I was looked down upon until they found out who my wife was. She's a fellow teacher, and then they treated me different, which made it worse. But, so I think the perspective, especially with parents, I've seen that pendulum swing huge. And a lot of it is because a lot of them are paying their kids' debt from college. So that's, and then the person either, didn't complete college or doesn't end up getting a job that's relevant to their degree. And college, everybody has just gotten outrageously expensive. So that I think is, and it's, everybody's perspective, but I think mostly it's the parents. And then with that, now that they're seeing that, a trade, you know, there's fewer and fewer people you can call to come fix something on your house or your car or anything. So that adds to it, and so it's more respected. And I think they're seeing that, you know, you can make I've made a really good living at it. I've got a great retirement. I've had health insurance the whole time. So it's, you know, but a lot of that's a credit to my union too. So. No, we work hard at it, but we don't have any trouble. Some of the other trades are very challenged. It's a generational thing. Like if Dale Stalen from the Masons was out of town, or he would be here talking to you, and Dale is challenged. He and the same thing. He's losing journeymen to different entities, like we all are, and it's a generational thing. I think it's just that the younger generation. I don't know, that getting your hands dirty, and like the masonry, that's heavy physical work. My work's physical, but not every day. Theirs is physical every day. And it's just, I think it's harder and harder to get young people to embrace that and want to do that, you know. And part of that too is the change in farming. You look at how, you know, what farmers have had to go to, everything's mechanized now. You know, I was 14 years old, I stowed hay bales that way. I tried to throw them across a mile that were heavier than I was then. So, but that's what all of us did, and that's not done anymore. You go get the bale, the big round bale with the tractor, and you know what I mean. Just that. There's the perfect example of fewer and fewer. I built a cottage, and my daughter was a junior, I think, when I started it, and she had a group of about 12, 14 kids, half boys, half girls. I got 2 boys to help me. But they were the only 2 of that group that I felt comfortable weren't going to cut their fingers off because they had done stuff with their fathers. And they were exceptions, really. I guess it's a generational thing. But I think, like I said, I think the pendulum's swinging back and more people are embracing trades, and that's a good thing. So, but we recruit, my training director and my assistant have done all of the BOCES. They did Canton College. We do all the job fairs. We recruit Fort Drum heavy also. And that's to not only recruit for here, but if the soldier's going back to Phoenix, Arizona, I want to explain the apprenticeship to them, give them contact information for that program there, because our program's done everywhere in the United States. I think just hold everybody to a high standard, and they do. The apprenticeship committee, you know, I've been to their quarterly meetings, but I haven't been in a few years, but I've been before. I guess it just hold the bar high for everybody, because it's important that, when you call something an apprenticeship, you need that work with the journeyman in the field along with the classroom training. So I think that's my thing. If they hold the bar high, and people will reach it if you hold them to that, And the state, from my experience, has been, I know the process of applying to have a new program. We just went through an audit for our program. I had an apprenticeship meeting in Plattsburgh Monday. The state DOL person that checks he was there speaking with our first-year apprentices, checking their blue books. We get monthly evaluations and everything. So I think everybody should be held to that same standard. So that's and everybody will be better for it. If somebody gets a certificate from New York State that says they're a journeyman, that should mean they're a journeyman.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Hoyt. I'm the Director of Manufacturing for New York Air Brake. You've been in our plant. I've got about 150 unionized employees here in skilled trades and middle skilled trades. I can tell you it takes from 5 weeks to 8 weeks to recruit and bring aboard an entry-level hourly employee, which then takes me anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half to train. In the skilled trade world, I can tell you it takes anywhere from 8 to 15 months to fill those roles. I've got journeyman electrician roles that are open for a long period of time because we have one. I can't run an apprenticeship program on that, as many of my other manufacturing colleagues can't, because we're not carrying enough people in those roles. So you asked about what you can do for the apprentice program. Broaden the reach. Allow it to affect more employers across that swatch. We're looking at sectors where we've got one toolmaker in an apprentice program and I've got 4 on site. When I lose my sector of my my retirees, which are going rapidly, we're going to open these roles up and not be able to fill them. If we look at the skilled trades in the U.S., 25% of those people are retiring in the next 10 years. The manufacturing sector is going to go through a major transformation in the next 10 years as we move to robotics. You've seen some of what we have on site. The hourly groups that are coming out of the educational system and into the workplace don't possess the skills that we need to access the integrated systems, the HMIS interfaces, the robotic systems. They're working on machine learning bases. They're in a whole different realm than what manufacturing was 20 years ago. So the pace is changing rapidly. The void is coming quickly. We're feeling it already. We are behind in recruiting skilled trades. We're behind in recruiting the hourly workforces, and we're behind in educating them and getting up to speed. We also need to be able to rapidly train. We're in a changing environment where, as people have already indicated, we see cyclical cycles in business levels. So we can't afford to see someone go out and then have a ramp up and take 10 to 12 weeks to hit a ramp. Our market is moving too quickly for that. So we need to be able to get people in the door that have the basic skills in soft and hard skills to be able to learn rapidly and to contribute quickly. In today's environment, we also don't see a millennial generation that's going into retirement mode, right? They move a little more often than what we're used to, which is even more reason for them to be able to come in, learn rapidly, and contribute more effectively. So it's a challenge we face across the manufacturing base, and it's one we've worked very hard to try and bridge. We're running 6 apprenticeship programs at NIAB right now. That's not an easy thing to do in 6 different trade sets, including putting in an apprenticeship program in the manufacturing realm. So we're running an industrial manufacturing technician program to educate our assemblers and our operations group, because here we are sitting in an environment where we are the center of excellence for electromechanical assemblers, and we're not getting people at those levels we need to. So we've got to educate that group now and get there. I think the biggest thing that I see is the gap that we experience from the time we bring someone into the door to where we need to get them to contribute at a high level. It's everything from lean manufacturing. We did 101 training with our entire workforce this year. Soft skills in terms of conflict management, team management. Hard skills in terms of math, measurements, tech, all that good stuff. It covers the gamut of where we're trying to get the people involved here. We've gone too long where we've encouraged the college and not encouraged into vocation. That still exists. We haven't broken that chain. If we go into the primary educators that I've spoken to, there's still a lot of emphasis into the college realm. There's nothing wrong with that, but at the end of the day, we've got an environment up here in manufacturing that we will not have the workforce to manage. As we move in manufacturing to automation robotics over the next 10 years, we will displace a significant chunk of the workforce who will no longer be able to work in that environment if they don't have those skills and experience. They will become obsolete in today's world, and that's not where we want them. There's a huge gap we need to fill. So I guess when I look at what you bring to the table, you bring a broader view of the state in terms of what it can contribute, what roles they have. I would say primary education is a huge touch point. We need to be in there. We need to be exposing. We do manufacturing day. We bring kids on site once a year. It's not enough. They don't see it. They don't touch it. We're not out in schools. I would love to see the primary and secondary schools reaching out to the manufacturing locations and industry in the area and asking people to come in and join them and speak. Spend a class, share some knowledge. I can tell you I started my career out of high school as a Navy vet on a submarine. I went into hourly workforce as a electromechanical technician and spent my time rising through the ranks. So I have the experience of seeing that through the large change in the roles from hourly to where I am now as a director. I think the harder levels to fill are those high-level technical skills that we're desperately trying to get. The boomer generation is retiring, and we're going to lose them. I've got currently, out of 150 unionized shop members in the Watertown plant, I believe I have 12 that have 35 to 40 years of experience. Then there's a small gap that has the next chunk of 10 years, and then there's a large group that's 15 years and less. So we're seeing a very big change in the service period, the experience level. So this fear, and we started late with apprenticeships. We started this past year. It's 5 years too late. By the time we get people into those trades enough, there won't be enough to train the next generation coming in, and we're losing all the experience from that generation that's retiring. We're actively holding retirees in the workplace, whether it's salary level or hourly level. We're trying to encourage them to stay with us, work them part-time, bring their skills in. Once they go, they're gone forever. We don't get them back. That knowledge base is huge, and it's very meaningful in terms of impact. So hopefully you've heard some in the vocation, you heard some in the primary. I think the engagement is missing between industry and manufacturing and those educational resources. I mean, they're not connected well enough, and it's a huge detriment. We talked about journeymen and how we try to educate them when we're stealing back and forth. Well, the reason we're stealing back and forth is, quite frankly, there's not enough. And we're going to steal for a while. And what happens is, as you start an apprentice program, yeah, you train a journeyman, and then they get trained, and you hit a saturation point where your wages start to stabilize all that. The reason it's not stabilizing is there's not enough. So we're not at a wage stabilization. We're trying to train those people into the workforce. If you have a larger group, it's easier to recruit and run apprenticeship programs. In the smaller groups, you can't. So the other piece I'd say is look at manufacturing in terms of mid-sized manufacturing plants. How can you use and bridge them together and form larger groups out of smaller subsets? From the educational, we've got JCC starting to get involved now in doing some of the technical education that we need for apprenticeship programs. That's a huge step for us. Those resources were pretty far and wide up here and probably not enough. But we're looking to send 2 and 3 people into a classroom environment, not 10, 15. If we can't match up and marry up, we lose a lot of that value.
When you started, did you ask your boss about flex hours and work from home options? And do you get asked that today with the
That's a normal request. That's a normal request in the salary world today, as is remote work. We're accommodating that. I can tell you that we have roles from New York Air Brake that we're supporting in states outside New York because we can't find them here or attract them here. From an hourly workforce standpoint, work-life balance is a lot more meaningful today than it was to the boomer generation. So yes, we're getting that request.
How do you, I mean, in something like manufacturing, how do you even manage that?
It's a challenge. As in general, what you have to do is you're overstaffed, right? Because you're planning for outages that are occurring at a higher level. You also have to realize that if that is today's culture, and it's not truly today's culture, you have a lot of ability to influence, particularly millennial generation, to get them to see a different light. But yes, they're looking for a different work life. You need to manage that. There's not a workforce option not to. So we're staffing above those levels. We're looking at automation to displace the hourly or the labor workforce and to optimize it. We're looking at ways to automate systems through off hours. I've got and I believe you've seen it, I've got a robotic system on site right now that'll run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doesn't need to be touched. Still needs to be maintained, and that's a level I don't have. So it's a challenge working with the generations in terms of what their demands are, but I think it's one we're stuck with, and we just have to figure out how to manage to it. It's an adaptation in our style.
So if you were in government and you have this, problem with your apprenticeship doesn't cover enough people, so you have to share with maybe another manufacturer that has the same needs. Isn't that what you were saying?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for more sponsorship for the programs, trying to drive people into them. We look at the grants and the programs for college entry and how states sponsor education in those roles. What are we sponsoring for vocational trades? How many state dollars are going to somebody that's going to be a journeyman electrician or a toolmaker? Can they get a repayment on that loan, or can they get a grant to go for free?
So I get that getting in, but how about for the manufacturers? Like, what could the state do to try to get, MACNY, I guess you have already some trade associations that...
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's strengthening the trade associations and engaging the manufacturers. I would say the larger the manufacturer, the more they know, right? What happens is once you step down to a certain level, the knowledge isn't even there. They're not sure who to ask. So, I've sat in many meetings where as you go around the table, everybody in the room doesn't understand what everybody else does, right? That's normal, and particularly in environments where they're all trying to help each other. How do you get those forums together so they understand what each other's purpose are and then can engage in a broader way? So moderating that, setting up those types of events, encouraging attendance. Small things go a long way that way.
networking, I mean, yeah. Okay, thanks.
I heard you say that over the next 10 years we're going to have a dramatic shift towards the automation. We've seen that progressing and it's only going to probably intensify, right? And you said that the current employees, there's going to be a major gap with them. What suggestions or ideas can you suggest to us to actually retrain some of these employees now, so 10 years down the road they'll still remain employed at that level?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that there's a little bit of difficulty answering in terms of we've gone through this in our history, right? The revolution, we moved out of farming. There's a whole lot of people who got displaced as we brought in all that technology, and they just never returned to work in those environments. There's an emphasis that I think needs to happen much lower down the education chain, right? It's not the people 10 years from now that are in the workforce that are going to be affected because they're going to learn and adapt. It's the group that's coming in that's still learning skills at that level and hasn't been elevated up that's not going to be able to get back in. I think that's where your opportunity lies.
Good day. My name is Terrence Harris. I'm the Associate Vice President for Workforce Development and Business at JCC. I want to thank you for holding these forums and for titling it so appropriately, Learning for Work. I'm happy that finally we're getting it, that workforce development is important, that college is not for everyone, that community colleges play an important role in workforce development, and that partnerships are important, that we have to bring industry to the table alongside of education, the community, and government. Very important. Traditionally, community colleges prepare people for transfer to four-year institutions and beyond. But we always say at JCC that our middle name is community. And so we have community colleges have what we used to call continuing education department. And we've always tried to prepare the community for work, for the workforce. But we've also been severely under-resourced. So for the past, I don't know how many years, funding to community colleges have been cut severely. So we cannot afford to do workforce development, and we're experiencing that today. So what I would ask you to look at is funding to the community colleges to do workforce development. We have a dilemma right now. If you look at this beautiful building where we're doing wonderful work, and you heard about the Carpentry program. So we're in a situation right now where we have capital dollars to do all kinds of programs, but no operational dollars. So as you think about workforce development and how you can make it happen, please think beyond capital funding. Think about operational funding as well, because you can give us all the capital dollars you can, but the equipment cannot teach the class, cannot turn the lights on, cannot open the doors. Operational dollars are important.
Teacher centers too.
Yes.
Teacher centers. We could be training people to go and work there. The teacher centers could do professional development.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and some of the problems we heard the other night with getting teachers from the trades is that to get someone to teach students, they're making more than the teacher. So if someone in the trades is making $60,000, let's say, and a teacher starts at what, 41, 42? If they're lucky. Yeah. So part of some of the problems we heard last night, or either that or Western New York, one of them, was that how do we get professionals to come in and start teaching K through 12? And I think that's one of the problems that we may have to look at. Okay. I have a question. Has anyone been talking to SUNY about what we're talking about tonight, and what kind of feedback are you getting from SUNY?
SUNY is very, very supportive of workforce development. As a matter of fact, Kathleen just got back from a conference where workforce development was the topic of the conference. So they're very, very supportive of it.
We heard in the last two meetings, I'm going to change it a little bit now. We've heard in both of those meetings that the state or we should be promoting what would we call it? A relook at what BOCES, a rebranding of BOCES, because of some of the stigmatisms or whatever you want to call it, where they say, well, this student is a BOCES student. And I'll give you an example of what happened last night. We had a 19-year-old talk to us. He was 19, right? 19 years old, talked to us about how his mother fought against him going to BOCES. And he wanted to go to BOCES. And she fought. And she was there to also talk after he did. And he was so focused on that she gave in and sent him to BOCES. And she said it's the best thing he ever did because he's got a job now, and I think he said he was making 65. His sister, who just graduated from college in June, has got $75,000 in debt and not a job. Kiddingly, he goes, I could give my sister a loan. Right? Now, here's the thing that I want to bring up about this. The mother gets up and talks about this and how she, what I just said, he fought. She pushed and pushed and pushed. She did not want him to go to BOCES. You know what she does for a living?
Guidance counselor.
No. She's a superintendent of school district.
I knew it was education.
And she now got a wide, different view of what exactly is happening, and I guess it hit home because, when she got up to talk, I really didn't know she was a superintendent of schools. And it was nice for her to come up and admit that she was wrong. And that school district has a different focus on what BOCES can do. And I just wanted to bring that up because, I think that's, she even made the comment that she thought that the kids that were going to BOCES were the ones that were causing trouble in school. And here, so I guess the thing of it was that she got up and admitted that she was wrong, and that she has a different view of what BOCES can do for students now. And I think that part of that problem is what's happening today with parents. You talk to a parent about, so you're telling me you can't push this kid a little bit harder to get him to go to college?
Exactly.
And in my personal, I have two children. One, my daughter is a pharmacist, so you got to understand she was a very good student. My son would rather be climbing poles. would rather be outside. People have asked me all the time, why isn't my son taking over my insurance office? Oh, good. He wouldn't want to put a tie on, nothing. Well, now he's doing this thing that I don't even know what it is, to tell you the truth. Fiber optic splicing. And I guess, you know, he did go to Jefferson Community College. And community colleges was it before he went into the workforce. The point about the two kids is now he's making as much money as my daughter, who's a pharmacist. So there's things out there that can work. You know, so.
Just a response to that, you asked an interesting question. All of you are elected officials. All of you are elected officials. How did you influence the public? How did you influence the public? How did you influence the public to become an elected official? PR, advertising, get the word out, right? When's the last time you saw it get the word out of BOCES class or a VOTEC skill or run a campaign? Educate the environment that it's there. I mean, that's a tool that we use very well as a public, right? We know how to PR, we know how to put it in the media. We're just not doing it. So you asked how we get the visibility for that parent?
You know, the other side of this is that if in fact, and Laurie knows this because she comes and sees me all the time. Here's the question: is manufacturing groups, is teachers organizations, is superintendents, or are they pushing the? Nobody's actually, to be honest with you, there ain't anybody coming around pushing us to do anything about this issue. We've heard there's problems, but is the people in the professions pushing Albany?
Well, but they are pushing you. Manufacturing's going south. You're just not feeling the push. It's there. I mean, and it's continue to be there. The voice isn't there because you've got hundreds and hundreds of small manufacturers that don't know how to raise that voice. So, we've got good skills to get it out. We created some of this through years and decades of educating our students and everybody that college was the right path. VOTEC wasn't. In order to change that, we need to do something fundamentally different.
We're talking about education, and again, I'm pointing to Laurie because she was the squeaky wheel and her Nancy before her. About, when this Common Core came out, didn't have any local educators working with curriculum. They didn't, they hired a firm, I think it was out of Indiana, to do the testing.
Three different ones. K2, then 3.5, then C/4.
Yeah.
6.8, and then a different one.
Right.
So none of them match.
Yeah. So you look at what came out in this since I've been in Albany, and you just wonder how in the heck the thinking is down there about what we ought to be doing for education and what we ought to be doing for educating our students. When you look across the street from our legislative office building, boy, that's a big, nice building across the street. It's called State Ed, and it's but I think that there's a lot of work that has to be done for us pushing what we're trying to push.
Are there any superintendents or board members here?
They just left.
I thought I saw one of them go. No, I was wondering because when you asked about rebranding, it depends on the school district, Ken. I'm fortunate at mine, we've turned them around. But there was, when Common Core first came out, the Board of Education directed my guidance counselor to make everybody apply for college. She stood up, so did I, because senior teacher, we're like, no, we have kids that want to run their family farms and they are going to be productive members. We are not making them pay money to apply for college. because they also weren't free and reduced lunches, so they had to pay the application fee. And they fought us. They don't fight us anymore because we stood up. But there are still districts doing that. They issue mission statements that they have to have so high a percentage apply to college. We also fought them. They wanted a certain number to apply for 4 years. And I said, no, I'm a proud JCC graduate, and I taught at JCC, and I'm telling kids to go to JCC so they're not dying in debt. And if they don't know what they really want to do, let them go to a community college so they can figure it out. So we fought them on that. So it really depends if you have someone that is mouthy or someone that just says, okay, I'll do what they tell me to. But there are districts here, and I'm not going to name names, but there are districts here because I have relatives that attend them, that they do have that horrible BOCES stigma, to the point where I have fought some of my relatives and said, you let that kid go to BOCES, because that's what they want to do, and that's where they'll be happy, and that will make them stay, and they'll find their passion. There are districts in this region that need to be re-educated. And it depends on the district.
Isn't it also true that the state evaluates school districts and really doesn't count much for the trade for anyone that... So it's the state pushing some of our high schools or
An admission.
We need somebody new on the Board of Regents. I'm willing to apply. I just need someone to sponsor me in the assembly. So.
Who's leaving?
Well, we're hoping that the one we have there might.
From Syracuse?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know how the Board of Regents works, you know that, don't you? See, I know this has nothing to do with that, but that's another political problem. Who gets on the board, except for a couple that we know that are really good. It's a political gift to some.
Sadly, the one heading the new committee to look at the assessments just passed away. That's not good.
Good evening. My name is Katie Carpenter. I'm the State Director of New York Agriculture in the Classroom. We're an outreach program of Cornell University. So my job is to work with K-12 educators who have little or no background about food or agriculture, but are really tired of their students not connecting to their curriculum, and we give them authentic learning experiences. Even though the majority of our conversation tonight has been around manufacturing, I think it's essential to make a nod to agriculture. Our food and agriculture systems, we know a couple things. We know that the students sitting in our classrooms today are at least 4 generations removed from the farm, maybe a little less in Lewis County. We also know that 20% of our current American agricultural workforce, or 20% of our American workforce is somehow involved in a career in agriculture. Now, there's probably one big scary thing that is important to mention. We know that in just 30 years, our population is going to grow exponentially. Our world population is about 7.5 billion people right now. By the year 2050, we're going to be at 11 billion people on this planet. Our students today are going to have to be the problem solvers for these next generations. How are we going to feed these people? How are we going to house these people? Even if our students today don't realize they're connected to food and agriculture, they have to be in tune to solve those problems for tomorrow. We work with K-12 educators to help them build those experiences. Agriculture fits very neatly in education and STEM. We do that super well, but we also fit really well in ELA and our social studies concepts. We try to work really hard to build those connections in food and agriculture for our teachers. We provide educator trainings across the state. We train over 400 educators a year, but we know that's just a drop in the bucket. We know that our outreach is close to 200,000 students, but we know we could also do more. Nestled with our program is also agricultural education for secondary students. We are under the same umbrella at Cornell. The growth of agricultural education programs and our comprehensive and BOCES centers wanting an agriculture teacher and to provide agricultural education opportunities to the students have grown. Just last week, we chartered 5 new FFA schools. 5 new FFA chapters just in 1 week alone. We have 316 agriculture teachers right now in New York State, and we have over 80 school districts who want an agriculture program because they see what we're doing as real and it's connected to industry. I think that manufacturing and other groups, I think as we need to continue to grow agricultural education, but there are some things that we do really well that maybe others can take note of and use as a model to develop their own in-school programs. And to be an agricultural education student, you have to be doing 3 things. You have to have a certified agriculture teacher, which we are pulling teachers from industry and getting them a transitional teaching certificate because they want to be teaching. Our program holds their hands to make sure they get certified. So you have that certified agriculture teacher offering classroom instruction. Second, you have FFA, which is leadership development. Our students are learning those soft skills. They're doing competitions in their areas of focus, and they're doing achievements on the local, state, and national level for those roles. It's an incredible youth organization, but you cannot be an FFA member without having classroom instruction. Finally, probably the most important thing is a supervised agricultural experience. Every agriculture student has to have workforce experience. They have to either have an investment of an operation of their own and keep accurate records. They also can be part of being part of another organization, working on a farm or working in agribusiness. Maybe that can serve as a model, just as a suggestion. We're doing great things in agricultural education, but there's more that we can do. We know that our schools want what we're doing because it's a great brand, as we talk about branding. My other just point to mention is in agriculture, we hear every single day, I work really closely with industry because we try to be nimble in what we offer to meet the needs of the educator and also meet the needs of emerging agricultural industries. We hear every single day, we need workers. We need somebody to work in our dairy processing plants, in our wood product development organizations, and our turf grass organizations. We need people. The problem? They don't come out to schools. A career fair 1 time a year doesn't do it justice. You need sustained connections with the classroom. And it's very difficult, especially, and I know in all industries, but especially in food production. It's hard for them to open their doors. They're working every day to keep things out of those buildings. There's no windows for a reason. The windows don't open. They don't let guests come in for a reason because we need to have a safe, affordable food supply. However, our students won't know what's happening inside those walls if somebody isn't talking to them about what's going on. They need to touch food and agriculture. They need to be part of it. So if there's a way, if there's a solution we can come up with to get those dairy processors out of the plant and into the classroom or vice versa, I think that will go a long way in many of our industries. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Emily. I work as a recruitment. Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay. My name is Emily. I work as a recruitment specialist for the ARC Oneida Lewis chapter. We employ from Oneida County up to Lewis County. I work with my coworker Rose. She's our North Region coordinator up here. She does a great job. She's everything up here for us. We have the ability to employ up to 160 people within the Lewis County area alone, not mentioning Jefferson, other areas that we can source them in, because not even 20 minutes away is Jefferson County. We can employ a lot of people in this area. We have about 30 openings up here at the moment. We need direct care support professionals. We need children to know how to take care of the individuals with developmental disabilities that we support. We support more than 1,400 people within the Oneida, Lewis County area. We need a program that is like a direct support professional certificate from BOCES that people can utilize and come work for us, go work for the hospitals, work in this human services field that's so needed. Because as long as you want to bring people here, you want them to have jobs, they're going to have children. They're going to have children who have developmental disabilities. We're always going to be needed. I can always offer employment to people in this area. I just don't have the people for that employment. So we need to work on something where we can get, I know these manufacturing jobs, they're great too, don't get me wrong, that's awesome. But we need more human service connection from these children. I reach out to all the BOCES. I go to all the job fairs up here. I'm in Watertown. I'm up here at least once a week. I'm from Utica. So I travel up here from Oneida County at least once a week because our recruitment efforts, we're trying really hard. We're doing all the outsourcing that we can. It's just really difficult to get people because they are attached to that stigma. I'm from Madison County. That's where I grew up. I now live in Oneida. Madison County, we had VVS. We had a great FFA chapter. They're amazing there. BOCES, well, I went to BOCES. I did an OT through there. It was looked down on. BOCES was looked down on. I believe that's pretty much everywhere because people want you to get that degree. I have a bachelor's degree. I have a master's degree from Cornell University. And here I am in the human services field, working as a recruitment specialist, trying to get people into our agency to show that we can employ you. I can offer you money. I can offer you that great work-life balance that, the millennial generation so wants. I offer just about 4 weeks of vacation off after your first year of employment. How many other employers can say that? So we need to be able to get people into these programs and start them as early as 7th, 8th, 9th grade. Let them know what we have and what we can do for them. So that's what I'll say. Do you have any questions for me?
You said that you go around talking with BOCES?
I'm sorry?
You said you go around talking with the
I have reached out to all the, I've reached out to,
results on that?
I'm sorry?
What were your results on that?
Mute.
Pardon?
Mute. They haven't gotten back to me. They don't want to hear about what we have to do at the ARC Oneida Lewis chapter. My one contact that I have back in my hometown is Madison, Oneida BOCES, but they don't reach our direction because they have their own. ARCs, as you know, Ken, are separated by counties. Madison, Cortland kind of takes over that Oneida, New York area. I don't have the proper connections, and I heard from one BOCES down in Utica. She goes, I don't have the time for you to come in and speak to my kids. By the way, do you want to sponsor somebody to get their CNA and then come work for you maybe? It costs me about $3,000 per new hire. I have the ability to employ up to 800 people in the Oneida, Lewis County area. Yeah, those are real numbers. I have over 200 openings. I look at my openings list every day I come into work. I have big numbers. Yes. Social media. Social media is my #1 recruiting tool. I use ZipRecruiter is like my main resource. Indeed, of course. Facebook, we get a lot of influx from Facebook. Up here, it's the radio stations, and it's our word of mouth. For the most part, it's a small area up here. Everybody knows everybody, good or bad, and they speak about us. They speak about the work we do. We're out in the community. They see the people that we support. You can go to any Lewis County night out, and our individuals will be there. They will be around. We try to get them out in the community. We want them to know that just because they have this disability doesn't mean that they have to be held back by anything. So that's what we really capsize on.
Thank you. Thank you. The ARC and I get along really well, don't we? You mentioned the FFA programs, and I, being the ranking member on agriculture, I sort of get to meet a lot of FFA students. About 10 years ago or so, when New York State started cutting school budgets, that gap elimination thing, if you ever were in the you saw that, a lot of the schools started cutting the FFA programs because they weren't core programs. And if you've ever been around the FFA program, you would realize what a disappointment that was. Some of the greatest kids, students that I've met over my 9 years down at in the assembly was FFA students, the Blue Jackets. And, you know, it's good to hear that we're increasing back up again. Never should have been decreased, but thanks for that. That's good news.
Well, I think something that's of value just to recognize with those, the success we have with our FFA members and why you think so highly of them is because they've had the opportunity to have directed learning. Those opportunities to apply the things that they are passionate about or identify their passions puts them on a path where they do have direction in their future, whether it's in a college or a career setting. Give them the skills.
In 2010, if you asked me what an FFA student was, I'd go, he's a future farmer. But what a mistake that is. The leadership qualities that they learn through that program is just, you know. Is there anybody else? Okay. You want to wrap it up? Okay. So maybe somebody wants to go see the World Series. The Yankees aren't in it, but first of all, I'd like to thank Mark and Will and Mike for making the travels. Well, not travel, you were around here, but Mike coming from Western New York and Will coming from Oswego County. Again, in all of our meetings, we've had different assembly members who are in that district, and we're getting the word out more and more. This is important that we hear from you locally. We've heard a few new things today that we haven't heard from the other two, and I think that's why you know, we haven't heard from the union down in the last two that we have talked. So we're getting excuse me. So we are getting different, even though a lot of it is the same. We are getting some different feedback, and hopefully by the time we get through with this, that we get more and more feedback. Everybody is bringing something to the table from every region, and I want to thank you for coming. It's been very helpful for us, and I know that the rest of the guys are as happy as I am to see everybody here. Did you want to say anything? You want to go home? Yes. You want to go to Buffalo? So is there any other questions at all before we close? Yes.
I just keep my mouth. So Ken, what's the goal at the end of these years? Are you going to put out a report on what?
Yeah.
Maybe you already talked
If you were on time. No, we are going to, again, I'll mention this, we're not doing this just for the heck of it. We are going to bring a report out, and that report will have solutions. So we're just not going to give a report, we're going to have solutions. We're going to pass them out, and if the solutions aren't the right way, we want to hear feedback, because, you know, before we go ahead and push anything, you'll get some of that report, and it'll be helpful for us to say, I think you're in the wrong, you know, I think you're doing it, you know, something's wrong with this, or you can be helpful on changing it a little bit. But we are going to be putting out solutions so that the Senate, the Assembly, the Governor, State Ed, SUNY, whoever we can get it to, that'll sit down and listen to us, that's what we're going to try to do. Now, again, Albany doesn't work like we can do this in January, but we're going to try to get it out as fast as we can. You know, we're all down there from January through June, and we'll see, you know, see what we can do. But yeah, we don't want to, I said this before, we don't want to get a report and shove it on our bookshelves. That's not what the purpose of this is. And so we're going to we're going to push and push and push until we get something through. Your help is needed, because it's just not us. It's who you guys represent to help us push Albany, because squeaky wheels, that thing really does help us down there. So your help is needed. So we're out, Anything else? All right. Well, thank you again for coming, and we'll be